Once upon a time, there was a little boy called Silly Billy. He was skipping through the village park one crisp morning, his mismatched socks peeking out from under his blue dungarees, and his cheeky grin as wide as ever. The leaves rustled underfoot, squirrels darted up trees, and the air smelled of damp grass and toast from nearby kitchens. Billy's pockets were stuffed with crumbs and conkers, and his imagination was already halfway to the moon. He was in the middle of pretending to be a racing snail, arms tucked in, chin low, making dramatic vroom-a noises, when something caught his eye near the duck pond. It wasn't a duck. It wasn't a dog. It was a penguin. A real, waddling, flapper-flippered penguin. Billy blinked. The penguin blinked back. "Hello," said Billy, crouching down. "Are you lost?" The penguin tilted its head and let out a happy squawk, as if to say, "Not anymore." Billy looked around. No zookeepers. No signs. Just him, the penguin, and a very surprised Sulky the cat, who had followed Billy and was now glaring from a bench like someone had stolen her favorite cushion. "Well," Billy said, standing up, brushing leaf bits off his knees, "I suppose we'd better have some fun." The penguin flapped its wings and waddled in a circle. Billy giggled. This was going to be the best day ever. They played chase around the flowerbeds, careful not to trample the tulips. Billy showed the penguin how to balance on the edge of the fountain. The penguin was terrible at it, but very determined. They took turns sliding down the grassy hill on their bottoms, laughing so hard their tummies hurt. Sulky the cat followed at a distance, occasionally meowing in protest whenever the penguin got too close. When Billy sat down on a bench to catch his breath, the penguin hopped up beside him and leaned gently against his arm. Billy looked down at the penguin's soft feathers and smiled. "You're not very good at being a duck," he whispered. The penguin gave a proud squawk. Billy nodded. "You're much better at being a penguin." And with that, the two new friends sat side by side, watching the clouds drift by, while Sulky curled up beneath the bench with one eye open, just in case the penguin tried anything funny. Billy led the penguin to the playground, where the swings creaked and the slide gleamed in the morning sun. "This," he said proudly, "is the best place for silliness." The penguin tilted its head, blinking up at the towering slide and the swaying swings. Billy marched ahead, his boots crunching over bark chips, and pointed dramatically at the swing set. "We start here," he declared. He helped the penguin onto the swing, tucking its flippers gently around the chains. "Hold on tight," Billy whispered, though he wasn't quite sure how penguins held anything. Then, with a careful push, the swing began to move. Back and forth. Back and forth. The penguin flapped with delight, squawking each time it swung forward. Billy laughed so hard he nearly toppled over. "You're a natural," he cried. "You're the first penguin in history to fly without wings." The swing soared a little higher, and the penguin let out a triumphant honk. A few leaves fluttered down from the trees, as if applauding. Then came the slide. Billy climbed to the top, arms raised like a champion. "Ready," he called. The penguin waddled to the bottom, watching. Billy whooshed down, arms up, shouting "wee," as he skidded to the end in a puff of bark chips. "Your turn," he said, brushing off his dungarees. The penguin climbed up with surprising speed, Bella first, slipping down with a surprised honk and landing in a heap of giggles. Billy clapped. "You're brilliant." Other children began to gather, wide-eyed and whispering. One girl, clutching a juice box, stepped forward. "Is that a real penguin?" she asked. "Of course," said Billy. "He's my new friend." "His name is?" "Mr. Flippers." Mr. Flippers waddled proudly, bowing to his audience with a theatrical dip. The children gasped and giggled. One boy tried to curtsy. Another offered a biscuit. Sulky the cat watched from the top of the climbing frame, unimpressed. Her tail flicked once, slowly. She narrowed her eyes at Mr. Flippers, as if to say, "I've seen better." Billy didn't notice. He was too busy spinning the roundabout with Mr. Flippers perched in the middle, flippers outstretched like a circus star. The playground echoed with laughter, the kind that makes your cheeks ache and your heart feel fizzy. And as the sun climbed higher, casting long shadows across the slide and swings, Billy knew one thing for certain: silliness was better when shared. Especially with a penguin. Billy and Mr. Flippers sat side by side on the park bench, their legs dangling above the grass, sharing a single vanilla ice cream cone. Billy licked one side with great concentration, careful not to let it drip onto his dungarees. Mr. Flippers pecked the other side with his beak, tilting his head between bites like he was inspecting a rare treasure. It was messy. It was sticky. It was perfect. "Do penguins like sprinkles?" Billy asked, holding up a small packet he'd found in his pocket, slightly crumpled, slightly warm, but still full of rainbow magic. Mr. Flippers blinked once, then sneezed. Sprinkles flew everywhere. They landed on Billy's lap, on Mr. Flipper's bow tie, and even on Sulky the cat, who had been lurking nearby under the bench. Sulky sniffed the air, gave a long, theatrical sigh, and turned away in disgust, her tail flicking like a metronome of disapproval. Billy laughed so hard he dropped the cone. It landed with a soft splat on the bench between them. Mr. Flippers didn't hesitate. He gobbled it up in one joyful gulp, then sat very still. "Hick," he said. Billy clutched his tummy, giggling until his cheeks hurt. "You've got the hiccups," he cried. "You're a hiccuping penguin." Mr. Flippers hiccuped again, flippers flapping with each bounce. Sulky narrowed her eyes and slunk off toward the flowerbeds, clearly done with the nonsense. Just then, Mum arrived, her arms full of shopping bags and her eyebrows raised like two curious caterpillars. She stopped in front of the bench and stared. "Billy," she said slowly, "why is there a penguin eating ice cream?" Billy wiped his sticky hands on his socks and beamed. "He's my friend," he said. "We're having a silly day." Mum blinked. She looked at the penguin. She looked at the sprinkles on her son's head. She looked at the empty cone and the hiccuping bird. Then she smiled. "Well," she said, "I suppose everyone needs one of those." Billy nodded. Mr. Flippers hiccuped again. Mum sat down beside them, placing her shopping bags on the ground. For a moment, the three of them sat quietly, watching the ducks paddle across the pond and the clouds drift lazily overhead. It was messy. It was sticky. It was perfect. Back home, Billy was already in full penguin mode. He'd rolled up his sleeves, kicked off his shoes, and was busy filling the paddling pool with the garden hose. Mr. Flippers waddled around the garden like a tiny explorer, inspecting flower pots with great seriousness and chasing butterflies with flappy enthusiasm. His red bow tie bobbed with every bounce. "Penguins like water," Billy explained confidently to Dad, who was perched on a stool under the apple tree, fixing a birdhouse with a pencil tucked behind his ear. "Not garden hoses," Dad muttered, just as Billy turned the tap on full blast. Water sprayed everywhere. The hose wriggled like a wild snake, and Billy squealed with delight. Mr. Flippers honked and flapped through the mist, spinning in circles and splashing through puddles. Billy joined in, slipping and sliding across the grass, arms outstretched like a soggy superhero. Dad got soaked. His pencil flew off somewhere into the flower bed. He blinked, dripping, and stared at Billy and the penguin, who were now doing synchronized belly slides across the lawn. Sulky the cat, who had been napping in a basket by the shed, got splashed. She leapt into the air with a yowl, landed on the fence, and sat there glaring like a soggy queen. Her fur puffed up like a damp dandelion. Billy didn't notice. He was too busy laughing. Mr. Flippers had discovered the joy of jumping into the paddling pool and then hopping out again, leaving wet penguin footprints all over the patio. Billy followed suit, cannonballing into the shallow water with a splash that sent droplets flying into Dad's tea. Mum peeked out the kitchen window, holding a dish towel and wearing her usual expression of amused concern. She took in the scene, Billy soaked from head to toe, Mr. Flippers honking like a trumpet, Dad dripping and bewildered, and Sulky sulking on the fence. She sighed. Then she laughed. "Looks like the penguin's fitting right in," she said. Billy waved up at her with the hose, accidentally spraying the window. Mum disappeared behind a curtain of droplets, but her laughter echoed through the garden. The sun shone brighter. The grass squelched underfoot. The paddling pool overflowed. And in the middle of it all, Billy and Mr. Flippers danced through the spray, two silly souls in a soggy paradise. Billy took Mr. Flippers to Gran and Grandad's cottage, a little stone house with ivy on the walls and a garden that smelled of mint and lavender. The front door creaked as they stepped inside, and the warm scent of lemon drizzle cake wrapped around them like a hug. Gran was in the kitchen, wearing her flour-dusted apron and humming a tune that sounded like sunshine. She turned from the oven, peering over her spectacles. Her eyes widened. "Well, I never," she said, blinking. "A penguin in my kitchen." Mr. Flippers stood very still, his red bow tie slightly askew, and gave a polite nod. "He's very polite," Billy said proudly. "And he loves biscuits." Gran raised an eyebrow, then smiled. She reached for the high shelf and pulled down her secret tin, the one with the faded roses and the squeaky lid. She opened it slowly, revealing a treasure trove of biscuits, chocolate digestives, jammy dodgers, and, right in the middle, a perfect custard cream. Mr. Flippers waddled forward, inspected the selection with great care, and chose the custard cream. He bowed deeply, Flippers outstretched. Gran giggled. "Well, he's got good taste." In the sitting room, Grandad was hunched over his latest invention, a jam jar telescope made from bits of string, sticky tape, and a lot of hope. He looked up as Billy and Mr. Flippers entered. "Does he like riddles?" Grandad asked, tapping the side of the telescope. Billy nodded. "He's very clever." Grandad leaned in, eyes twinkling. "What waddles in the morning, slides at noon, and flaps at night?" Mr. Flippers tilted his head, then honked. "Correct," said Grandad, chuckling. "It's you." Everyone laughed. Billy clapped his hands. Gran wiped her eyes with the corner of her apron. Even Sulky, who had followed them in and was now curled up on Gran's knitting basket, let out a soft purr of approval. The afternoon drifted by in a haze of cake crumbs and riddles. Mr. Flippers tried to look through the jam jar telescope but ended up pecking the lens. Billy helped Gran stir icing for the cake while Grandad told stories about penguins who sailed the 7 seas. Outside, the garden buzzed with bees and birdsong. Inside, the cottage glowed with warmth and laughter. And in the middle of it all sat Billy and Mr. Flippers, two unlikely friends, perfectly at home. That afternoon, the village held a surprise parade. No one had planned it, exactly, it just sort of happened, as things often do in places where silliness is welcome and the sun is shining. Bunting fluttered from lampposts, music drifted from a brass band near the bakery, and neighbors spilled out of their houses with smiles and sandwiches. Billy stood at the edge of the green, holding a tiny red bow tie. "Hold still," he said, fastening it gently around Mr. Flipper's neck. The penguin blinked solemnly, then gave a proud honk. "You look very parade-wise," Billy said. "Now let's show them how it's done." They joined the procession behind a float made of flower pots and wheelbarrows. Billy marched proudly, chest out, arms swinging. Mr. Flippers waddled beside him like royalty, flippers slightly raised, head held high. His bow tie bobbed with each step, catching the sunlight like a badge of honor. Children clapped. Grown-ups waved. Someone threw confetti made of shredded shopping lists. The mayor, wearing a sash and a hat shaped like a loaf of bread, stepped forward with a grin. For most unexpected guest, he announced, pinning a ribbon to Mr. Flipper's bow tie. And for bringing the most smiles. Billy beamed. Mr. Flippers bowed. The crowd cheered. Sulky the cat, of course, refused to walk. She rode in a pram pushed by Billy's cousin, looking grumpier than ever. Her ears were flat, her tail flicked like a metronome, and she glared at every balloon that dared float too close. Billy didn't mind. He waved at Sulky and blew her a kiss. She blinked slowly, unimpressed. The parade wound through the village, past the post office, the duck pond, and the corner shop where Mrs. Tiddle handed out free biscuits. Mr. Flippers accepted one with a nod and tucked it under his wing for later. At the village square, the band played a wobbly version of Twinkle Twinkle, and Billy and Mr. Flippers danced in a circle. Billy's dungarees were dusty, his socks were mismatched, and his cheeks were pink with joy. Mr. Flippers waddled in time to the music, occasionally honking in rhythm. Sulky yawned dramatically from her pram, then curled into a ball and pretended not to watch. As the parade came to a close, Billy leaned down and whispered, "Best parade ever." Mr. Flippers honked softly in agreement, and as the sun dipped behind the rooftops and the last of the bunting fluttered in the breeze, the village glowed with the kind of happiness that only comes from a truly silly day. Just as the sun began to set, casting long golden shadows across the park, a puffing zookeeper appeared at the edge of the duck pond. His cheeks were flushed, his shirt was crumpled, and he clutched a clipboard like it was the last biscuit in the tin. He scanned the scene, children laughing, ducks quacking, and one very cheeky penguin waddling in circles with a red bow tie. "There you are," he cried, pointing dramatically. "You cheeky penguin! Escaped from the zoo this morning." Billy froze. His heart sank like a stone in the pond. He looked at Mr. Flippers, who had just finished bowing to a group of toddlers and was now blinking up at the zookeeper with innocent eyes. "He's my friend," Billy said quietly, stepping in front of the penguin. The zookeeper knelt down, resting his clipboard on his knee. His voice softened. "He's lovely, isn't he? But he misses his penguin pals." Billy looked at Mr. Flippers, who tilted his head and let out a gentle honk. Then, without hesitation, the penguin waddled forward and nuzzled Billy's cheek, warm and feathery and full of goodbye. Billy hugged him tight, burying his face in Mr. Flipper's soft feathers. "Will he be okay?" he whispered. "Better than okay," said the zookeeper, smiling. "We'll tell the other penguins all about his silly day. The swings, the slide, the ice cream, the parade. They'll be very impressed." Billy nodded slowly. "Tell them he's the best penguin ever." The zookeeper stood and gently reached for Mr. Flippers, who gave one last honk and waddled into his arms. Billy watched as they turned toward the path, the penguin looking back once, Flippers raised in a wave. Sulky the cat, who had been watching from the bench with narrowed eyes, let out a quiet meow and hopped down, padding over to Billy. She rubbed against his leg, just once, then sat beside him in silence. The sun dipped lower, painting the sky in streaks of orange and pink. Billy sat on the bench, hands in his lap, watching the zookeeper and Mr. Flippers disappear around the bend. He didn't cry. Not really. But his nose felt funny and his chest felt full, and as the breeze rustled the leaves and the ducks settled in for the night, Billy whispered to the wind, "Best penguin ever." That night, Billy sat in bed, wrapped in his favorite blanket, the one with a mysterious jam stain from last Tuesday, thinking about Mr. Flippers. The room was quiet, except for the soft ticking of the clock and the occasional snore from Sulky the cat, who had claimed the foot of the bed like a throne. Her tail twitched every now and then, as if she were dreaming of something mildly annoying. Mum came in first, carrying a stack of folded laundry and a gentle smile. She tucked Billy in with practiced hands, smoothing the blanket around his shoulders and brushing a curl from his forehead. "All cozy?" she asked. Billy nodded. "I'm thinking about Mr. Flippers." Mum sat beside him for a moment, her eyes soft. "He had a very silly day." "The silliest," Billy whispered. Dad followed, holding a mug of hot chocolate with extra marshmallows, some already melting into gooey blobs. He handed it over carefully, then ruffled Billy's hair. "One sip at a time," he said. "No chocolate mustaches on the pillow." Billy giggled and took a sip. It was warm and sweet and perfect. Gran popped her head in next, holding something woolly and wonderful. "Look what I made," she said, revealing a tiny penguin jumper, complete with flipper holes and a red bow stitched at the neck. "Just in case he visits again." Billy held it close. "He'd love it." Grandad shuffled in behind her, carrying a tiny telescope made from jam jars and string. "For stargazing," he said. "Or penguin spotting." Billy placed it on his bedside table, next to his collection of conkers and a half-eaten biscuit. "Thanks, Grandad." Sulky stretched, yawned, and curled tighter at Billy's feet, still unimpressed by the day's events. She blinked once, then closed her eyes again, clearly deciding that penguins were beneath her notice. Billy smiled. "Do you think he'll remember me?" "Always," said Mum, kissing his forehead. Billy closed his eyes. In his dreams, Mr. Flipper slid down slides, danced in puddles, and waved from a snowy hill. He wore his bow tie proudly and honked with joy. The parade marched by again, the swings creaked with laughter, and the garden hose sprayed rainbows into the sky. It had been a silly day, a wonderful day. A day to remember. And somewhere, in a cozy zoo, nestled among his penguin pals, Mr. Flippers was dreaming too, of swings and slides, of biscuits and bows, and of one very silly boy named Billy.